As part of a restructuring process, Ster-Kinekor initially planned to close 9 cinemas and shed 226 jobs. In the end, the country's largest movie exhibitor only closed 2 cinemas and cut less than 60 jobs, mainly at head office level. Is this a telling sign that the business of cinema is back in business? Company CEO Mark Sardi joins us with more detail. Mark, a pleasure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
All right, Mark, it does sound like the restructure went better than anticipated. Let's talk about that. It must have been quite a challenging effort, but it looks like it's been worth it as well.
Yes. So look, restructures are never a pleasant thing to do because it impacts people directly. So that's one. 2, it creates an enormous amount of uncertainty around your staff. And 3, it has an unpleasant impact on culture. So there's a whole lot of rebuilding that we need to do. However, the surgery was necessary. I think, what came out of business rescue was perhaps something that still was big company thinking, and the head office was just overly sized for the economy and the sort of market that we have at the moment. So the head office now half its size. We've closed the 2 cinemas, but also the beauty of our model is where we close cinemas, it's often possible to repurpose people to other cinemas in and around the same area. That's the beauty of having 60%, of the market share in the country.
That does sound like a good story. I want to speak about, the plans looking ahead here, Mark, because, of course, that does become an important one. We know that how people consume movies has changed, but cinemas still have, I think, a unique place in society.
I completely agree with you. And obviously, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but as a consumer of movies, there is nothing quite like it. As we say in the industry, cinema gives movies majesty. If you go into a screen, directors make movies for the big screen to initially be consumed in that platform. We do believe there's a place for streaming, but there's enough evidence globally to suggest that if we launch something first in our platform, in cinema, in an exhibition, it will stick longer in the streaming platform. So we think there's a world in which we both can coexist. Things like, stitching episode 1 of, season 7 of Game of Thrones on a movie will make it stick longer in the platform. But there's also a whole lot of other things I think we have to think about as exhibitors, because the world has changed. The way people consume media has changed. And so things like, throwback cinema, where we take a week and we put movies that were launched back in 2000 and the early 80s. And we've seen phenomenal success where we just remind people of what it's like to go to the cinema, where you have 2.5 hours of uninterrupted, fully engaged time with something that transports you to another world. So I think in all worlds, there's also more we can do with the various platforms that we have. So we've got IMAX, for example. So if you ever watched Dune, or if you watched Oppenheimer, or any of the others that are shot on IMAX cameras, there's no better place to consume that movie than IMAX. You have Prestige, which is your business class version of our offering, where you have the reclining seats and food and drinks get brought to you. We have Kids Cinema, which allows parents to sort of disengage with their kids in a safe environment. We've got these slides that go around the side of the cinema so they can, create mayhem around the sides while you watch a consumer movie on sort of beanbag seats. So I think bringing some, if you excuse me, theatre back to theatre is part of the journey.
I also want to speak about space for gaming and e-gaming, coding and the likes, how that you're imagining will fit into the overall model, Mark.
Yeah, so we think we've got a lot of space. We've got space in places that people feel comfortable to leave their children. So malls in South Africa are, on a global standard, comparable, if not better than anything you'll find in a first world economy. And we have a large number of screens at our various sites. So we're saying, well, if the movie slate is temporarily a bit slower, is there a way to build in a CSI initiative where it coincides with our vision of creating sort of an entertainment offering, but you also bring this theme of education. So there's a platform by which we will bring lecturers in to teach kids how to game or to code. Then, during the week, Monday to Thursday, when our attendances are generally lower, you can play the sort of the Ferrari version of that game against other kids. And then, believe it or not, there is a thriving industry in watching other people play video games against each other. So all 3 of those sit naturally in our stable.
I also would like to speak here just about then, trying to find that sweet spot in terms of breaking even and profitability, Mark, and then maybe even thriving again. And, how the kind of mix that we'd have to see between some of the other initiatives and then even just showing movies and the likes. How are we thinking about that, the different permutations that could exist for that?
That's a very good question, because the cinema movie model is one which is quite unusual. You've got control over your costs to a large degree. It's rentals and it's people, but you have very little control over the revenue line. It's all what gets produced in Hollywood. So where you have a Hollywood writers and actors strike, where content that was supposed to be scheduled for this year now gets kicked into the next year, you have this dearth of content. So you've got to fill the seats some other way. So we are engaging on this throwback cinema, which for each week between now and the end of October, we will show some of the older movies to remind people. We will be launching a value offering. There's a lot in the press around it's very expensive to go to movies, and if I take my kids and my family out, it costs me X and Y. We've done a whole lot of benchmarking against other forms of entertainment, against the cost of our tickets and the entertainment package versus other parts of the world. And in all cases, we're cheaper, but it doesn't matter. If the consumer has a perception that it isn't, we need to change that. So in early July, we will be launching what we call this entertainment version 2.0. Now, there you can see why I'm not in marketing, because there's going to be a much sexier way of describing exactly that. But something that packages value for an experience in the way that perhaps we haven't done it before. We're also engaging with our partners, the distributors, so the people who get the movies from other parts of the world to sell on to us, in a way that looks to reignite energy around cinema again. So in spring, we will launch another initiative, probably coinciding with either some big releases or relaunch of older movies. But what's different this time around to perhaps any other post-COVID or post-streaming event is this whole concept of partnerships. The engagements I have with my landlords are such that they also know that the longer term future for real estate is probably more entertainment based than it is shopping, because of the onslaught of online shopping. So if you have something that can anchor your key customer or your shopper in an entertainment experience, we play a very important role there. And similarly with the distributors that talk to the great and the good of Hollywood, it's starting to put a case for something that is perhaps more African or South African unique in the next 6 to 12 months as we navigate through this sort of slower content period.
Well, Mark, I look forward to seeing it, hearing it, and being a part of it. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us this afternoon. Thank you so much. That was Mark Sardi, CEO at Ster-Kinekor.